Hi, my name is Mason Duchatschek, and in today's episode, I get the privilege and honor of interviewing Charles Reed, who is the author of the Payroll Book, which I highly recommend. And today, we're going to talk about some payroll. So one of the first questions I'd like to ask him is, what are some of the upcoming changes to payroll in 2021 that business owners should know about?
Well, there's a lot of things that are happening. One of the things is unemployment rates are going to go up. I mean, we've had massive unemployment this year, and it has to be paid back into the system. There is going to be state unemployment, and federal unemployment is not going to go up next year, but the year after that, because of the way it's calculated, there's at least 20 states already, and there'll probably be more that'll be on the food surcharge in 2022. But state rates have already gone up. I have seen some increases as much as 500%.
Wow.
Okay, for state unemployment rates. That's going to happen. There's other things. The new Form 1099 NEC goes into effect January 1. So when you've been using a 1099 miss in previous years, you've got to go to a 1099 NEC. They have reinstituted that this year. Then, if you haven't done your PPP filings to get your PPP waived, your repayment of it, you need to do that. There's all the things with the FFCRA, the Families First Corona Response Act, that are still in place. Some are expiring December 26th of 2020, and many of them will be continued into next year. We don't know what the Congress is going to do, but we know they're going to do a whole bunch of stuff, and you've got to be on top of that, because it's all going to keep changing. With a change in administration, there's going to be a change. If there is a change in administration, there will be a change in focus and direction and a reversal of things, and it's going to be an extremely interesting year that you need to keep on top of.
Thank you. You completed 3 years on IRSAC. What are their most recent recommendations?
Okay, so you know, IRSAC is the Internal Revenue Service Advisory Council. The Internal Revenue, it's a FACA, it's a Federal Advisory Committee, and it's about 25 people. You serve a 3-year term. They get people, accountants, lawyers, tax practitioners, so on, from industry that can come in and talk to the IRS in a way that the IRS can't talk to itself, because the IRS is very insular.
Sure.
They're in their own little world. All the major staff is inside the Beltway. They don't get out to Kansas City or Dallas, Texas, or Tulsa. They're in Washington, D.C., and they live in that environment. The IRSAC brings in knowledgeable people that are chosen by the IRS, but they're, like me, tax practitioners, payroll companies, lawyers. The commissioner of the IRS, who currently Chuck Reddick, used to serve on IRSAC when he was a tax attorney in San Diego. These are people who are knowledgeable, and they come in and they advise the IRS on situations and conditions, some of which the IRS presents, some of which we bring in from outside and say, you guys need to look at this. This is a problem. This affects us and affects our taxpayers. It makes taxes harder to collect and harder to regulate. Fix it. So it's fun. It's been interesting. Some of the big things that we discussed this year in IRSAC, a lot of technical stuff, obviously.
Sure.
But the budget is a big problem. We've recommended, as IRSAC, that the Congress look at the budget for the IRS, because that's a big thing. And every dollar that's spent, what the IRS spends, they bring in several dollars of revenue. So that's a major problem. The next thing is the Taxpayer First Act that was passed by Congress. It has a whole bunch of provisions that the IRS is trying to put in place, one of which includes setting up IRS appeals as a separate division. Now, it'll still report to the commissioner, but they want to make it more separate and more friendly to taxpayers. A lot of this Taxpayer First Act is designed to make the IRS more friendly and easy to approach. Of course, we've tried that before with the IRS and it hasn't been real successful, but Congress insists on trying it again. The next thing is e-filing. The IRS wants everything electronic. I mean, that's a goal.
Sure.
But it's an effective goal. It allows the IRS to utilize their dollars better. When they can process that return electronically, they don't have to spend man hours on it.
Sure.
That effectively increases their budget automatically. They are, again, pushing for a major technology increase with that, which they've tried before. And some of the IRS technology goes back to the 1960s still.
Wow.
And a lot of it is still very manual. If you were in a commercial company doing the kind of work manually they do, you'd be out of business because your costs would be so much higher than your competition.
Gotcha.
So they're working on becoming more electronic and therefore more efficient.
Well, thank you. This is one of the questions I've been waiting to ask you. What is the payroll book about?
The payroll book is literally 30 years of being a payroll service bureau and 20 years before that of having to do payroll myself and being involved with it, all distilled down to 85,000 words. Okay? It's my experiences in the payroll industry. It's things you should do, things you shouldn't do, horror stories that have happened to other people. It's a dry read, but there's some interesting stuff in there.
Sure.
But what it's designed to do is for an entrepreneur or a small business, get you through the payroll process. It starts out with what kind of entity you should be, depends on how your payroll is going to work out. So if you're going to be a corporation, one thing happens. If you're a sole proprietor, something else happens. Then all the taxes, all the deductions, all the income, how it's handled, whether you have employees or independent contractors, and that's a huge thing. The Department of Labor estimates 70% of all businesses misclassify employees either as salary versus hourly or independent contractor versus employee.
And the consequences of that are pretty grave.
The consequences of that can be devastating to a business. If you classify them as independent contractors and don't withhold taxes and don't pay it into the government, and the government comes in and says, oh no, these are employees, all that stuff you should have paid in, you have to pay in and try and collect it from your former employees.
Which that's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. Plus penalties and interest.
And that will happen.
That will happen. And it's put more than one business out of business. So that's what the book is about. And we go into other details about employee handbooks and PEOs and S-Cheat, which nobody ever understands, and all kinds of other things.
So we talk about entrepreneurs and small business. You know, what size companies are you talking about? Because a lot of people have different definitions of small business.
This is really designed for the 50 and under.
Okay.
At 50, you fall into affordable care and some other things. And there's a list in the book of all the various laws that you're subject to, starting at one person, then at 10, at 25, at 50, at 100, and so on. And the different companies are subject to different laws. And if whether you're interstate or intrastate makes a difference. Okay, so we deal with the under 50, which is 95% of all U.S. businesses are less than 50 people. That's what this book is designed for. To me, that's a small business, and an entrepreneur obviously can start out as one and end up as 100,000.
Sure.
But this is for him to start out with.
Awesome. What would you say is, or how would you describe the differences between, because obviously you brought that up, how would you describe the differences between an independent contractor and an employee? Because that is so important.
Okay. There's a number of ways to look at this, but the basic falls down to 20 common law rules. And you go through that list of 20 rules, and they handle with, who controls, who supervises, who oversees, whether you make a profit or a loss. But it comes down to, in the end, control. Do you control the job, or does the employee control the job? The employee controls the job. For instance, as an accountant, if you bring me a tax return to do, I can have my junior in the back do it, look it over, sign my name to it, and hand it to you.
Right.
If I'm an employee, I don't get to substitute Joe for my job. Oh, Joe's going to handle my job today. He's going to come in and do it, and I'll take care of paying him. That's not going to work.
Right.
Okay? Second thing, big thing is profit or loss. If I'm doing a job and I get paid regardless, I'm more likely an employee. Now, if I do a job and I get paid a set sum of money, but my costs can vary, okay? Again, I'm an accountant. If I take on a tax return that I think is going to take me 2 hours to do, so I quote a fee of a couple $100, and it takes me 2 days because, whatever. Or I pay my junior $400 to do the return because it's so difficult, and I'm only getting $200. I got a loss.
Right.
As an employee, you don't take that risk.
Gotcha.
As an independent contractor, you do. So when you go through the 20 common law rules, the courts say it's a preponderance of those rules, whether or not you're an employee or an independent contractor. And in the end, it comes down to the judge. If he says you're an employee, you're an employee. That's the end of it, is in the courts. Now, you can file an SS-8 with the IRS, and they'll determine whether that person is a employee or an independent contractor. Guess what they're going to determine?
Probably that you're an employee.
Right, because they prefer an employee, because employees' taxes get collected and deposited, and the compliance rate for employees with W-2s is around 99%. The compliance rate for people who aren't reported and deposits aren't made for it runs about 37%.
A little bit of a difference there. I can see why they might go that. I liked, in one of our conversations offline, I liked how you were able to size up whether a company was well run or not. And I would love for you to share with our audience what you shared with me.
Well, this is a lot of experience, and I've seen it expressed similarly elsewhere, but it's the perks and it's the people. If you walk into a business and up front you see parking spots that have the executive's name on them, that's a bad indication, because they really don't care about their people. When I was in North Carolina and I would trudge through the snow from the far parking lot where I parked with the employees, with the hourly people, and I'd come by that door and there were the spots for the executives that weren't in there yet. I know what the hourly people were thinking. Why am I trudging through the snow when these people have close-in parking spots and they're not even here? That's one.
It's almost like back in the days when we were in the military, like the leaders eat last.
And they should.
Absolutely.
Okay? It's the mission, the men, and then you.
Yes.
In that order. Okay? Second thing, talking about eating, is there a private dining room for the boss and the executives? When I'm at the IRS, at least with Chuck Reddick, who's the new commissioner, he eats in the cafeteria. He normally has a salad, by the way. Okay? The cafeteria's pretty good there, actually. But he'll eat there, and anybody can walk up to him and sit down with him and talk to him. I have on several occasions. It's fascinating to watch that. Now, he has his protective detail. They sit over there, and they keep an eye on everything,
Sure.
Of course. But any IRS employee, and you have to be one to get in the building or a approved visitor, can sit down with Chuck and talk to him. That kind of thing is important. If the boss eats in the employee cafeteria and employees can talk to him and bring them problems, if they can't, that's a problem. If they can, they feel like they're part of the institution. And the third thing, from my point of view, is walk into the men's room. If it's clean, that's good. If it's dirty and there's paper towels thrown all over the place and the toilets are clogged up and so on, nobody cares about the place. If they don't care about the restroom, they don't care about the rest of it.
It's almost kind of like back in the day when polishing our boots in the barracks for.
I have cleaned more than one floor with a toothbrush. Yes.
I have bounced quarters off of bunks as well. Make sure it was nice and tight.
Everything's in its place, and everything has a place.
Yes.
And that's part of running a good manufacturing plant.
I appreciate you sharing that. It was meaningful to me when we discussed it, and I'm glad that the people that are watching are able to learn from that as well.
My pleasure.
What do you think is the biggest mistake most business owners make and how could they avoid it?
Oh, there's so many they can make. The biggest thing probably is hiring. And we've discussed this in other
Sure.
interviews. If you don't hire the right people and supervise them properly, know who you're hiring, know what they're capable of, and put them in a job they can succeed at. Then train them, educate them, bring them along. You've got a good employees, keeps turnover down, keeps costs down, they're more effective, they're more efficient, they produce more revenue, you're getting more revenue per dollar of labor. All those things go into it. Okay? So if you get the right people in the right job, you're going to succeed. If you put the wrong people, or you put the right people in the wrong job, it's just going to be grief until you fix it. And fixing it is both expensive and emotionally wrenching. I don't know of anybody that likes to fire people.
No, that's terrible.
But one of the most important things you can do if you can make a bad hire is fix it as quickly as possible. I know it's gut-wrenching for everybody involved. So make good hires, and you don't have to do that.
Fair enough. Looking back on your career, what's the one thing that you know now that you wish you would have known when you first started, and why?
Oh, wow. That's a very interesting question. It's going to fall back to people. I came out of the Marine Corps, and in the Marine Corps, you are either a superior or you're a junior. Everybody, from the commandant down to the rankest private, knows who's above them and who's below them. Every time you get promoted, you may be sergeants together, but one of you is senior to the other one, and you get to tell the other one what to do, or he gets to tell you what to do. That works in the military. It doesn't work in business. You can't treat people like they're subordinate to you. It's a team effort. Companies are teams. It's partnerships with your employees, with your executives, with everybody in the business. You can't, they're not subordinate, they're part of the team.
It's interesting you say that because I agree with you, and I think there are a lot of employers out there and air quote leaders who don't understand the difference between rank and authority.
Right.
Rank / title doesn't give you super abilities or superpowers just in itself.
Nope.
And one of the comments discussions I've had with people in the past was back in the Army. I remember, I wasn't a mechanic. You could take a private who is a diesel mechanic, and that person may not have rank. But if the vehicle that my unit is dependent upon to haul all of our stuff is broken down, I might have the rank, but that guy is the authority because he is the one person of all of us that knows how to solve that problem and to get us back on the road.
I have worked out of doing payrolls on a daily basis. I used to, when I started, I'd do payrolls. I'd work them, work the software and so on. Well, I've got people in place, and I've got an operations manager, and I've got customer service reps and so on. And these people process the payrolls. They no longer let me process payrolls because I don't know anymore. The software has changed, we have new systems, and so on and so forth. And they don't want me to touch it. I have the authority to go in there and do it if I want, and I'd be a fool to do so because I don't know how to do it anymore. It's all different. It's like, your diesel mechanic may be great at that, but let's not put him in a nuclear submarine in the power plant.
Right, absolutely.
Okay? It's changed. It's different. Yeah, they both move the vehicle, but it's a whole different world. I no longer know that world. I know the law. I know procedures and policies, lots of things. I know the IRS. But I don't do payrolls anymore. I've got specialists to do that I respect greatly because they're experts at doing it. And I keep getting them trained better and better and better. And that's part of the deal.
One more question for you. How is Get Payroll different from other big companies?
What we provide is compliance. Our competitors frankly, do a reasonably good job of producing a paycheck or a direct deposit. We all do.
Sure.
But when a problem happens, that's when you need Get Payroll. CPAs, U.S. tax court practitioners on staff, we take a Form 2848, which is a IRS power of attorney. It's a limited power of attorney, which allows us to advocate for you with the IRS on employment tax issues.
Now that's a big deal. 'Cause let me make sure I understand that right. So basically what you're telling me is that I would have to hire typically an attorney to go represent on the tax court versus you guys being able to handle that. Correct?
Absolutely, and write that check for $5,000 as a retainer.
That's a big deal.
Our services for that are included in your fee.
Okay.
Okay.
That is a big deal.
It's a big deal. And when a mistake happens, and a mistake is going to happen, it's not if, it's a matter of when. Whether you make it, or the IRS makes it, or the state makes it, or the unemployment people make it, or an employee makes it. When that happens, and the IRS comes and says, penalties and interest and taxes, what do you do? This isn't your bailiwick. This isn't what you do for a living. You know, you sell widgets. You make and sell widgets. Taxes, you don't know what to do. You're lost. Well, we're experts at it. We do it all the time. We deal with the IRS almost daily. Been doing it for 30 years. We have people in place that can handle all those situations and deal with the IRS. One of the simple things, you cannot be penalized for a simple mistake. That's right in the law. If it's a simple mistake, the IRS cannot penalize you and therefore can't charge you interest on top of the penalty. But guess who determines in the beginning what's a simple mistake and what's gross negligence?
That would be them.
That would be them. And you have to argue with them that this is a simple mistake and they can't penalize you. And I'm real good at that. My staff is real good at that. And we have the letters, and we have the law, and we have the examples, and we have the precedents
Sure.
to prove this is a simple mistake. That's just one of the things we can do.
Wonderful. Thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to share. You've got a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience, and I think that the people that are taking the time to tune into our discussion are going to be better off because they did. How would people go about reaching out to you, learning more about you or your company? What's the best way to reach you?
Well, Mason, obviously getpayroll.com is our main site. The Payroll Book is available on thepayrollbook.com or on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, other fine bookstores. You can reach me at CJR at Get Payroll. That's my email. And frankly, you can call me, 972-353-0000. It's the only good thing Verizon ever did for me.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure visiting with you, and I hope that those who are viewing enjoy their time as much as I have.
My pleasure, Mason. Thank you.
you.